today we have the pleasure of Vet joining us. So if you don't know Vet, he's out there. He's a big community member for the XRP Ledger. He is the co-founder for XRP Cafe. And I'm excited to have him on the show today to talk about all the developments and amendments on the XRPL, what's going on with RLUSD, and answer a lot of the questions that you guys sent me. So without further ado, Vet, how are you doing? Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Jake, for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to talk with you and excited.
Absolutely, brother. So for those that may not know who you are, would you give them, we had a little chat before here, but
Yeah.
can you give them kind of a rundown of what you're involved with, your expertise, and why you're somebody they need to listen to around the XRPL and everything that is involved there?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I'm co-founder of XRP Cafe, as you mentioned as well. I run infrastructure for the XRP Ledger, like validators and also submission nodes. We have also validator on the EVM sidechain, for example. But other than that, I'm very engaged in the community. I like community building, getting the people together, getting them basically committed to the ecosystem, and build out the use case. Build out the use case, get the word out, advocacy. This is something that I have a pleasure, and of course, talking to people because yeah, that's something I really love. That's why we're here.
Absolutely, man. So, I mean, we could take this a lot of different ways. I know enough to be dangerous about stuff being built on the XRPL. You run a validator on the network and literally vote on the amendments through XRP Cafe with you and your co-founder there. So I guess we kind of start with maybe stablecoins being issued on the XRPL, maybe the implications for what that's going to look like. Maybe we can get into AMMs, and then we can kind of get into these amendments that are up for vote and then future ones and what that's going to look like. So you haven't what are your thoughts on RLUSD? We saw that Ripple, minted 185 the other day. It's in beta. What do you think that's going to look like at scale for stablecoins on the XRPL?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ripple announced a while ago the stablecoin initiative, and there was a rumor what's the name about. Now we know the name. Time frame is it seems to be end of this year, Q4, but we really don't know. And yeah, that's a huge move for Ripple. That's definitely a huge move for Ripple going into the stablecoin business. We have Tether, USDT, we have USDC, Circle. But really trusted in America and used in America is probably Circle USDC as a well-regulated company. And yeah, Ripple embarking in that journey is very interesting, and it is something the XRP ledger really needs. Yeah, we don't have quality stablecoins. We have stablecoins, but as it is with stablecoins, there's also the brand association behind it. So Circle, for example, USDC, it's a brand essentially, and Ripple is a strong name in the industry for customers, for institutions, and they build trust over many years. And so I'm excited for them going into this. And as I said, it's very important for the XRP ledger to have that, because currently as I said, we don't have these quality issue stable coins, and it is holding probably back a lot of the developments. If you look correlation on other ecosystems, AMM, DeFi, all of these use cases. And yes, correct. They are currently very active in testing the minting and burning small amounts of RLUSD on XRP Ledger and Ethereum. The interest is very big. I built a small tracker on Twitter that is tracking those mintings and burnings on the ledger. So plug that in, and I think within a week it had like 3,500 followers because people really wanted to know what's going on. So it tells me just from that there's huge interest from the community regarding it, and I'm curious to see where this is going and when they're actually going to launch. But it's very significant for the ecosystem.
Yeah, so for people that may not know, a stable coin is just a stable value. It's a representation. It's backed one-to-one by something off-chain, right? So dollar-denominated assets, treasuries, bonds, literally cash in a one-to-one representation. And you might wonder, well, why does that matter? Well, when you're exchanging value on a network, you need liquidity, right? And for the transactions to be at scale and used in a lot of the use cases that we're wanting for XRP and the XRPL, you need stable coins issued on the network, right? you
Absolutely.
need stable dollar denominated assets and other currencies as well in the AMMs that are native to the network, right? To be able to be a stable side of, whatever other issued assets going to be inside of an AMM and a pool. So what do you think about like the clawback provision? So, and again, maybe we can kind of just step back and tell people what that is. Banks need the ability to recall payments.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Ripple's payment model up to this point has just been push. They haven't
Yep.
had a way to be able to pull back payments. And so for them to be able to issue a stable coin and then recall that payment because they are the issuer would be very advantageous. Do you think that that'll be, but it's also problematic for the AMMs, right? Because if you have a clawback provision for a stable coin and AMM, and they could pull that back at any time, it could remove liquidity from an ecosystem and be an issue. So do you think that they'll program that via the smart contract, either native to the network or on the EVM, with a way that it's like optional, that they can issue RLUSD that does have a clawback provision and then another allotment that's not, so that those can be used in AMMs? Like, thoughts there?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So the clawback, for those who don't know, it's essentially to, as the name suggests, to claw back the tokens from a different wallet. So if I'm the issuer and you have my token, I can take that literally from you, and that's very powerful, of course. And it is only for these issued tokens, not for XRP, only for issued tokens. And in the conversation on X and with David, it seems to be really something for regulation, and we have to understand what the process of this would be. So if there is a malicious actor and they have or hacker, criminal, and they have RLUSD, okay, what Ripple would do is freeze the account. Okay, so they freeze the trust line. The account, you cannot freeze the account, but the trust line, so that they cannot move those funds. Okay, they cannot move those funds. And then of course you freeze it, and then the investigation goes on, right? Are you really involved or not, depending, court decisions. And if it happens to be the case that, okay, we need to take that back, then you would use that clawback. Without clawback, what you would do is just leave it frozen, essentially, the trust line. And what David said, and it makes total sense, is if you leave it like that, you have basically tokens on the ledger who represent real obligations, because those tokens are corresponding to real dollars in a bank account, right? That will not move, and it's essentially stuck.
Wasted.
So if you want to have a good representation of how much is in circulation and how much is in reserve in a bank account, you need to be able to fix those situations, and that is only possible with a clawback. And so that is the reason behind it. And yes, you're right. Currently, it would not work with the AMM. So that is then very interesting scenario where we have to think: are we going to wait for this amendment because it's currently in the work to allow that to be used in an AMM clawback tokens? Are they going to wait for it, or are they going to still issue RLUSD on the XRP Ledger without the ability to use it in the DEX? And the AMM, sorry. Yeah. So it will still be able to use in the order book because that is no problem, but not in the AMM. Yeah, that's an interesting scenario. I think they might gonna go for it because you can just issue it and then later on you can use it in the AMM, but it's for people to understand, okay, you cannot immediately use it in the AMM. But that's the reason behind it. And if you look at other issuers, Tether has it as well, for example. Interestingly enough, USDC doesn't have it on Ethereum. They just freeze. They just freeze it. So they seem not to be bothered with more tokens in circulation or something like that. They just consider that this is gone. If they freeze it, that's it. So yeah.
Well, I think there could be some other implications for Tether, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that RLUSD will ever be as big as Tether. I kind of think that Tether may end up being rolled into the government somehow, but I do think there may be some sanctions or actions issued against them for circumventing sanctions with Iran and Russia. Brad Garlinghouse has come out and talked about
He
that.
said, yeah.
When we talked to MasterCard earlier this year, they are not using Tether. A lot of the large institutions that we deal with touch Tether. So it's a good position for Ripple to be in. USDC and Paxos seem to have passed the sniff test for a lot of the regulators and the institutions. And
Yeah.
so I know that there's a portion of Ripple's business for ODL that
Hmm.
has gone through Tether, the
Hmm.
more liquid corridors between the US and the UK that are dollar denominated. Just because it's been more liquid, they've been using that.
Yep.
Um, and so for them to be able to issue a stable coin that is trusted and backed, I think that that'll replace the volume that they've been, using Tether for in ODL transactions.
Yeah.
And it'll actually probably give them some money versus Tether. So I don't know how much volume that is on a regular basis that they are using the Tether for in that ODL product. Do you have any idea?
I really don't, but we have to understand that of course, they want to bring RLUSD also for the ecosystem and so that we have quality stablecoin. But obviously, it's also self-serving, right? They're
Oh
a
yeah.
business and they are here to make money, of course. So for RLUSD, it makes total sense for them because it seems that a lot of customers are asking, and this is positive for us blockchain users, to be and still on chain. Because usually it was like, hey, we go from fiat, then through XRP, still to fiat, right? And now they say, hey, we want to go through XRP, but still gonna end up not with fiat, but with a stable coin on chain. We want to stay on chain, and it is positive that these institutions are comfortable with that. And of course, it's a huge on ramp, right? It's an on ramp. If you have $100 million, how are you able to bring this on chain? That's real question. And having an on ramp like Ripple with a stable coin, let's say, okay, we're gonna take your 100 million and give you 100 million on chain as a stable coin, makes total sense. But it is a signal, specifically because this market is so lucrative, that more and more institutions and big players are coming with large pockets, right? They want to be on-ramped into the ecosystem, and that is very, very interesting for me to observe.
Yeah, and people might wonder, well, why would you want to do that, right? So if you're not familiar with this technology, I always like to take a step back and just explain things. So
Yeah.
if you just use Swift to settle payments, the messaging, they're almost real time. They're T+1, right? A lot of the world has moved to that at this point. But if you have a digitized version of the dollar on chain, it's almost instant settlement, and it's far cheaper than dealing with the fees that currently exist, right? So you're much more
Yes.
liquid, payments settle faster. You can get more business done. It's 24/7, 365 instead of being limited to just bank operation hours. So there's a
Correct.
lot of benefits for institutions to move on chain with their liquidity and have business. The velocity of money should pick up exponentially once this all rolls out. So that's huge. I guess let's move over to the AMMs and kind of what you're
Yeah.
seeing there. I actually have the privilege of knowing a gentleman here in Dallas that runs the largest AMM on the XRPL for crypto land.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
and so, he has his XRP, wrapped up in that with their token for their ecosystem.
Oh, nice.
I think they have like 3 or 4 million in liquidity in the
I
pool.
think they also do NFTs, right? I
Yes,
think they
yeah. So
issue
it's
also.
it's a
Yeah.
game. CryptoLand's a
Yeah.
game. It's native to the
Yeah.
XRPL. He has a lot of adoption in Southeast Asia and other jurisdictions aside from the U.S. So
Hmm.
no, securities concern or anything there. People that are dealing with that are outside the U.S. Um, so anyway, yeah, we've seen a lot of people lose some money via
Yeah.
impermanent loss.
Hmm.
We did see a really big run in people starting to adopt the AMMs. So like Uniswap took like 3 months to get 1 million in liquidity, whereas
Yeah.
the AMMs on the XRPL was like 3 days.
Yeah.
So just thoughts there. How does that progress? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a start of a long tail of basically bootstrapping, right? We need to bootstrap the AMM, and it's like this game of liquidity attracts liquidity, but you got to start with liquidity. Like you got to start somewhere to attract more, and that is yeah, you have to start somewhere. And yeah, to be honest, if we look at so currently, I think we are at 14 to 15 million TVL dollars. That is above Stellar, above Flare, for example. But there's of course a lot of room up, right? We are a top 5, top 10 blockchain, so there's a lot of room. And given that we don't have a really good quality stablecoin, being at 15 million is actually really, really good. Like it's actually the surprise that
It's
I'm
gotten this
seeing
far
here.
without that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, without that, that is the actual for me surprise. And I think specifically now with RLUSD, that is really the what I'm looking forward is what it can do for the AMM in terms of adoption. We see a lot of pools. We have a lot of pairs, which is fantastic, but we need to get more of the volume going, so people trading on the AMM, so that the pool operators are able to make money and allocate more capital. So it's like this flywheel effect that I hope with RLUSD will really trigger that, because essentially there is no good way currently to trade in and out of XRP on chain. If you want to trade in and out of, you have to use a centralized exchange. But with RLUSD, you suddenly introduce the option for people to say, hey, I can trade in and out of XRP, right? I can short it, I can long it, I can do these things. And that is of course that I'm looking forward for the AMM. But so far it works great. People are using it. They have no problem with it, and there's a lot of arbitragers even using it, which is very interesting. So there's a lot of activity going on, but we need to scale it up, and I think that we will see this slowly and surely over the next months and years.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, just like to step back and explain things for people
Yeah,
who be, looking at this for the first time. Bet and I have,
yeah.
Bet more so than me for sure, has a much deeper understanding of all this stuff. So an AMM, we've used the abbreviation, is an automated market maker. There
Hmm.
are AMMs on other networks. What's unique about this one is the liquidity pool tokens that are issued have to be bid to arbitrage the market for a 24-hour period, and you get no fees during that period, right? So normally arbitrage would just leave a market. So let's say, you bought it here and sold it here. You make this spread as somebody that arbitrages a market between ecosystems. This is how Sam Bankman made all his money. Apparently, it was like he would buy Bitcoin on one exchange, send it to another
Yes.
exchange, and sell it at a higher price, right? And he made an algorithm that did that over and over again. So there's people that create algorithms and trading algorithms that make money off of this.
Mhm.
To do that in these AMMs, you have to bid for that opportunity. So those LP tokens that are sold onto the open market for people that pull money out of the pool have to be put back in or bid for that opportunity. And when they're put back in, they get burnt. And so that value is then transferred back to the other liquidity tokens that are in the pool, and the value of those tokens go up in opposition
Yeah.
to that. So the people that are putting money in the pool to provide liquidity in these transactions, in these markets, end up getting a larger, well, they don't get any in a normal market. They're going to get a big chunk of that in these
Yeah.
markets, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, as you said, so you can arbitrage these pools, right? And we are seeing people arbitraging them, but you can arbitrage them more effectively, of course, if you take the discount, right? You take the discount rule, you pay less fees, and that is essentially goes to the liquidity providers, because usually when you have these volatilities, then what David also says is like this volatility capturing. So that as much as possible of this volatility goes to the liquidity providers. And this is a nice, very awesome mechanism introduced all on the layer one, right? You don't have smart contracts, it's all on the layer one blockchain. And that is very strong, very strong. We haven't seen a lot of people using those auction mechanisms yet. Um, we were kind of looking, so some people say there are some improvements that can be done because it's for 24 hours, for example, that you get this discount. Some people say it would be cool if it would be up until someone comes and overbids you. But there are some discussions going on. It's an awesome feature. Absolutely, I agree with you. It's great for arbitraging.
Yeah, I think, as this progresses and we do see stablecoin regs come in, maybe there's some institutions that issue stablecoins on the XRPL. It is an open, decentralized public network, right?
Exactly.
And so maybe let's go that direction.
Yeah.
You run a validator on the
Yeah.
network through XRP Cafe. Is that correct?
And it's my own.
Oh,
It's
it's
my
your
own.
own. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe we can get into the discussion around like how that works. So it's kind of like for people that know what a DAO is, right?
Hmm.
It's a decentralized autonomous organization. You have a bunch of people that sit on a board and vote, right? And they
Hmm.
all have equal weight, basically,
Hmm.
and they have to come to a quorum or consensus that meets a certain mark for something to happen.
Correct.
And
Correct.
on the XRPL, that's an 80% mark
Hmm.
before, and it has to maintain that for 2 weeks also.
Correct.
So
Correct.
right now we have so there's a difference between validators and nodes also.
Yep, correct.
Can you give people the difference there, and then kind of like why the validators are ones that are voting?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So first, everything is a node. So
Okay.
the we call RLUSD the server software of the XRP Ledger. Everything is a node, but you can configure those nodes to do different tasks. So, for example, you can make them to be full history nodes. Then they record basically the whole history of the XRP Ledger
There's no
since
such thing as
20.
a full history node on the
Yeah,
XRPL.
not exactly. Yeah, up until we know essentially the first 32,569 ledgers. Yes. Um, yeah, excluding those, all those, which is gigantic. It's enormous amount of data. 30 terabytes is huge. Then there are other nodes like for pathfinding, specialized for pathfinding, for just submitting transactions, sending transactions to the ledger, but also to query, to request information. So you can specialize those nodes. And of course, one of the more known specializations is validator. So you can specialize it and configure it to be a validator. And then it validates transactions. It participates in the consensus mechanism. And how it works, we have, I think, currently, if I just look at my screen, we have
35.
currently around, yeah, 100, we have 115 validators in total. Yeah, 115 in total on the mainnet. And out of those 115 validators, 35 are on what we call the DONL, the overlap. So for those who don't know how it works, so first, all validators can vote. All 115 can vote. Yes, everyone can vote. But all the nodes on the XRP ledger, not only validators, they put down a list of people that they are trusting. Okay. And the overlap of all those lists, if you would stack them, are those 35. So those 35 appear on everyone's trusted list, and therefore they become the UNL, so to speak. And and this list, those validators, from these people, the votes are being counted essentially. So everyone can vote, but the counted ones are from the overlap of those validators. We call them also proof of association as the consensus mechanism. And yeah, that's essentially how the voting works and how the UNL comes together essentially.
Got it. So you're kind of like delegating your vote to the other people that you trust and have verified on the network, and then they do their representation. You say these people are known, I
Yeah,
trust them, I've had experience with them, they're
yeah,
legitimate. If they're going to
yeah,
be ones voting, then we
yeah.
trust them to make good decisions. Is that kind of how that works?
I like that you, yeah, I like that you made the comparison with a DAO or with a governance because it's essentially on-chain governance and how that works. It's how you said you basically delegate. Yeah, you say these are the people I want to listen to, and that's it. And the cool thing with that is, you validators can do very little damage. This is why, yes, you say trusted, but they cannot do much harm, which is very good because you want to be flexible with that. So it's impossible to do double spending on the XRP ledger, for example. You can do this with Bitcoin, for example, Ethereum, not possible. Like there's no probability for this. And the second of all is you can also not order transactions like sandwich attack people, miner extracted value, and all that. You cannot do this as a block producer because we don't have we call this a dictator of the moment. We don't. For example, Bitcoin, if someone mines a block, that's that person who dictates the block, and that's not something we do on the XRP ledger. So no dictator of the moment, and essentially also there's no incentive, right? The best incentive is no incentive. This is where it comes from. David Schwartz is there's no competition in it. If you do it better than me, then by all means do it. And there's no competition. But if there would be rewards, right, we would compete against that because I want to have that share as well. So it's a different dynamic as well. And I like the comparison that you made with the governance and DAO. That's essentially really it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the best incentive is no incentive, right? Like you're not being paid or compensated to do this. You want to trust the
Yeah.
transactions that are
Yeah.
being done on this network, and you want participation to be able to view those and make sure that it's being
Yeah.
done right. So
Yeah.
if you were governments or institutions or universities, all of
Yeah.
which run nodes and validators on the network, then you use it so that you can trust it, right? You have a full history of all the
Exactly.
transactions. You can query it. You can cater it to however you said would be a best fit for your situation and why you're using the network. So I guess let's get
Correct.
to the amendments, right?
Yeah.
So when changes to the main net are being proposed, there's like a 10-step process that they have to go
Yes.
through. They're worked through, the code is checked, there's a lot of
Yeah.
bugs, they work through those things,
Yeah.
and it'll get to a point where I guess talk about like the last 3 steps before it might be proposed and put up for
Mhm.
vote. And then we've had a few things where it went live, and then there's been like one little bug, and then there's been an
Yeah.
amendment to push a fix to the main net. So
Mhm.
what does that look like, and kind of walk people through it?
Absolutely. So what we have to understand, we don't have smart contracts on the XRP ledger, okay? Maybe we're going to have it in the future, we don't know, but currently we don't have smart contracts. There's a lot of hooks, for example, in Zaha and all these things, but we don't have smart contracts on the XRP ledger, which means every change, like in terms of features or even performance or anything like that, needs to be coded into the blockchain, into the ledger, into the code base, and then proposed to other people to install that software, okay?
Okay.
And the same thing with the AMM. So if we want an AMM and we got it, that needs to be put into the XRP ledger, and then everybody needs to install that software. And how that usually works is it starts off all with a discussion, right? You have an idea, and you say, "Hey, I have an idea. This is what I think, and I propose XLS so and so." And then people discuss that idea and give their thoughts on it and all of this. And after a while, when you think, okay, that's well discussed now, you can close this discussion. And usually, typically after that, it follows a code implementation if necessary. Not all standards are code implementations, but in that case, you would create the code implementation and create a pull request so that the maintainers of the code base can review it. Okay, so typically 2 reviewers, maybe also an audit depending on the size of it. An AMM had, for example, 2 audits. And once that is done, you have also reviewed the code. It's all good and done. Then it gets merged into the code base, and then eventually up for voting for the people. So when they install it, they can then start voting on it. And yes, so then people start voting on it and do their due diligence, look at it, and sometimes in this time frame, a lot of testing starts because, as per usual, people only start testing it when it's imminent because it's like as per usual. And if there's a bug found, then something interesting happens. You now have a software where you have a feature that you're voting on that cannot go live until a fix should be implemented. So then it comes a new software update with a new amendment with a new fix. And then you have basically the amendment and the fix for it. And then what typically people choose is, okay, let's vote the fix in, and then we vote the actual amendment in. That goes in. It can be very complicated. We have seen this with XLS 20 NFTs on the XRP Ledger. We have also seen it with the AMM. Um, it's a tendency, and that's normal because huge amendments, huge changes to the XRP ledger, they come with the software things, right? It's just normal. It's human that you have bugs, you have sometimes
Yeah.
issues, and
Until you
yeah,
test it and trial it, you're not going to
exactly.
be.
Yeah,
I don't know how familiar people are with coding that are going to be watching
yeah,
this, but
yeah. It's a lot.
it's always until you run. You can do as much due diligence and in the
Yeah,
background as you want, but once you push it, there's going to be something
yeah,
that didn't go
yeah.
the way you thought it was going to go.
It's not even sometimes just the that there is issue in terms of bugs, but could be even a regression in
Something
performance. Like you
else.
see,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, it's like so now payments are slower or something like that. That shouldn't be the case, right? So we have to roll back, see what the issue is. And this all takes time. And we have seen this at Apex at the stage where David and Brett Garlinghouse was on stage, and David said, yes, Brett wants 1,000 things, but these take time on the ledger. So in my opinion, now that we have the stage where we really push a lot of features and we want a lot of things, the possibility and the attractiveness of smart contracts is becoming more and more real because you can do it now then if you have it. And that is a huge selling point, right? If you can do it now, then yeah, that's amazing. That's also good for people like even Ripple, yeah, because they have plans. Like look at RLUSD, look at these things, AMM, for example. They have probably a lot of partners that they plan to roll out such features, but you cannot plan in a decentralized network. You don't know what's coming up. With a smart contract, it's much easier. So I think yeah, it's a selling point. It becomes more and more a selling point.
Well, it's more sustainable over the long term. There's not a centralized
Yeah,
authority that has power over
yeah,
everything. I know that there's a lot of
yeah,
people that are like, oh, Ripple
yeah,
holds
yeah,
this much XRP and it's centralized, but it's not, because there's
yeah.
literally governance on the network, and I've
Exactly.
seen people in opposition for months,
Yes.
gridlocked, not moving either direction because they couldn't come to an agreement about something. And it takes time. You have to have those discussions. It's like a government, right? Like we have these different branches
Absolutely.
and separations within the government. It's got to go through this process to get
Yeah,
passed. And that's
yeah,
good and bad, right?
yeah,
Sometimes you make concessions to the other party to roll this into a bill or something, or you say, hey, you pass mine, I'll pass yours, right?
yes,
I've seen that happen a few
exactly.
times on
Yeah,
server.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So, but that's how you come to consensus and things move forward, right? And so
Exactly.
it's been cool to watch, and it's frustrating at times,
Yes,
especially
yeah,
when you're excited about something and you want to see it roll
yes,
out. Like, so as an example, we went to consensus not 2024 but 2023. I
yeah.
talked to David and I asked him
Hmm.
what kind of time frame on the AMM, what he thought, and he was like, "Yeah, October seems about right." Well, it got proposed in
Yeah.
October, and then 6 months later it got implemented.
6 months
Right.
later. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and now we've got a fix, right, that we're trying to push to. And so things are just taking longer, but that also tells
yes,
me that this is sustainable over the long term, and there aren't going to be problems that get pushed. And then
yeah,
network, that's the other thing about the XRPL. It's never been down. Solana
yeah,
goes down all the
yeah.
time. There's been other problems with other networks. We haven't ever had that with the XRPL. So
We had some pauses, I think, in 2021, but
yeah,
it's not comparable to what Solana, like with days or sometimes, whatever.
yeah,
Um, we don't have that, and that's a good thing, as you said. That's a good thing. Like the XRP Ledger and the governance in general is more, as you said, conservative, right? They're more, they want to make sure they don't want to break things because we have a long reputation of, it's a good blockchain and nobody wants to break that. So I agree with you. It's like this,
you
yeah, it's
gotta
like
take the
this
good with the
middle.
bad.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. It really is.
So let's I mean, we have a lot of amendments that are coming up on the
Yeah.
XRPL that I'm personally excited about. Digital identity,
Hmm.
I'm like super
Yes.
excited about. Most people are like, identity, that doesn't seem like, kind of boring. Let's get to the sexy stuff, the pseudo accounts, the liquidity pools, the borrow and lend. But until you have digital identity and custody in place, like
Yeah,
went to Swell last year, they harped on that the whole time. They made the acquisition with Medico there for Ripple. Now they've acquired standard custody and trust to make sure that the compliance is there for their treasury and their stable coins and the XRP. Um, we got atomic swaps, XLS 56. We've got, like I said, pseudo accounts, 64, liquidity pools 65, borrow and lend 66.
yeah,
47 is oracles, right? So in order to have
yes,
markets being able to pull real-time data from financial products on chain to have things in the AMM
exactly.
scale. All these things are like lined up. I see the dominoes and the progression of what could happen here, but it seems like lately we're just at a stalemate on them pushing
Yeah,
through the
yeah,
fixes and digital identity. So I've kind of set the stage for you, but just give me your thoughts on all that.
yeah. So real quick on these whole amendments, and we see all these features coming in. I think people have to understand that there is for like at least 2 years now, clear commitment from Ripple to basically plug the whole RippleNet, Ripple payment site into the XRP ledger. So they want really to bring now their customers, institutional customers, on chain. They want to bring institutions actually on chain that you can see them transact on the ledger. Okay. And that of course needs a tremendous, that's super exciting, right? All the money, all the billions basically, um, being put on the XRP ledger, which is exciting. And you need but all these features. So we have this compliance first approach, which is like the ID, for example, is a big one. But if you look also at the lending and borrowing, looking at these things, we have the credentials, on-chain credentials is also another amendment. And the domains, the permission domains. So there's a lot of parts here to enable good compliance on chain, so that people are comfortable being on chain institutions to transact. And as you mentioned, yes, we have DID currently is proposed. We have Price Oracle is also very, very important, and actually also a bunch of fixed amendments. And they're currently not moving much. This has more to do with the current situation, I would say. We had huge update fatigue with the AMM that was, going like we really updated it within 2 weeks, the whole network, which is insane actually for the XRP Ledger because it's such a big network. And I'm very confident specifically now if you look that there's a new around the corner, there's a new update, RLUSD 2.22. And 2.22 is promising to bring very needed features and improvements so that we can actually move on with these amendments currently. So for the feature amendments, I think we might need to hold on for maybe a little bit, but the fixed amendments definitely, in my opinion, I'm voting for all of them. But that's the thing, we are on a decentralized network, so giving you an answer why other people are not voting is hard, because if you knew, then it's not decentralized. But I try to make up my mind as well, and I think, as I said, this new RLUSD amendment 2.2.2, hopefully more information will come after that as well. It's already on GitHub. It is very, very crucial to the current situation.
So, I mean, you have a time frame or like any best? You're gonna have a better guess than me. So,
yeah, hard. I would say
this. When we talked in October last year about the AMM, you gave a very, I don't want to say stark contrast. I was very excited. I thought it would get implemented faster. I thought we'd get the and you were like, "Hold up, man! Like, I think you understand the full scope of everything that's going on here, and there's a lot more people involved.
Yes,
it's going to take a lot longer than you think." And you were right.
Yeah,
I mean, you said you were hopeful with 3 or 4 months, and it took 6. So
it took 6.
Yeah. So I'm going to defer to you moving forward on time frame.
Yeah, with this one, it's more interesting. But I think I would say September. I'm looking at September, first half of October, that some of these in a good position to be in activation period, because we are starting to getting more of the RLUSD updates in front of us. So there's some contraction happening as well with the updates coming in front of us. But I hope to share more. But currently, it's very, very important we get this new update coming, because that's very crucial. The 2.2.2. Once we have that, then I think more operators will be comfortable moving forward. Currently, so I would say, just best guess, because I don't know. I would say between 1 and 2 months. I say best, but probably more on the lower side.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's been in a stalemate for a while now, right? Like, after the AMMs got passed and the excitement there, that was like March-ish.
Yeah.
Then they proposed some of these other amendments, the digital identity, the fix for that. We didn't talk about the Exchange Bridge and XLS 38. That's still sitting out there.
Yeah, I think this will not come, Exchange Bridge, personally, because that was like the amendment used for the EVM sidechain. But now they came out and say, hey, we're going to use XLR, so we are not needing this anymore. So now a lot of validators thinking, okay, why would I activate this if nobody is using it? If anyone come forward and say, hey, I want to use it, then people will vote for it. But as long as nobody wants it, then why getting it on chain?
Yeah, why do you need to add it? So what about hooks, right? So I know that they wanted to push
hooks to the
mainnet so that there were smart contracts native to the XRP. And then they were like, well, let's trial it on the side chain first before we push it to the mainnet, just to make sure that it's not going to reduce scalability and speed of transactions and a lot of the stuff you discussed before. So do you see some instance where hooks does move to the mainnet if the Exchange Bridge isn't passed, or do you think it's better if they utilize the Exchange Bridge for the interaction between the mainnet and the HAO or the hooks network?
Yeah, I think Exchange Bridge has nothing to do with that. So it's literally just a bridge where XLR will be now used. Hooks is just really more. It's like really big. It's like probably the biggest amendment that we have seen. It's bigger than the AMM and all that, because it really works even in the consensus and everything. So it's a really large one, and even the implications, like programmability, is huge. smart contract is huge, and having that on chain would be it's a huge thing. And I think specifically if we look at where we are currently in the cycle, and I mentioned this with all these features, it just makes more and more sense to have smart contracts and programmability. Okay, because we want all these features now. We don't want to have them in a year. In addition, it's also in terms of isolating some security things. When we had the issue with the AMM, everybody was involved, right? And people were like shocked. If you have a smart contract that's only isolated to that smart contract, you can just remove it, right? And just abandon it and use a new one. So in terms of hooks and programmability, I'm personally very, very optimistic that we will eventually see a smart contracts on the XRP Ledger, because there's no good alternative to it. It seems more and more obvious that we need it. The only discussion that needs to be held, in my opinion, that I'm missing is how can we do it? You know, how can we do it? Can we do full hooks, half hooks, something similar like hooks? Can we look at Soroban, at Stellar? Something, you know, like we have to see what are designs out there and suit the XRP ledger with, of course, the XRP ledger in mind, like security. We don't want to hurt the payment use case, of course. We don't want to have resource constraints. Like all of these things need to be considered. And once we have that, I think we will see it. The more years, it's very simple. 2024, 2025, 2026, with each year, the likelihood gets up. So maybe 50% next year, and 2026, I would say 90% we would have actually. Like it really goes that, because it's hard to imagine that we can run like this. You see this with the amendments. It's just not feasible. So many things are coming up. So many people are proposing amendments. It's just, yeah.
I would relate it to like how Texas is versus the United States government. Okay, so
yeah,
here in Texas, like the Bill of Rights and what we have for amendments in the government, you know, I think we have. This is going to show how poor I am at history, you know. So don't let that reflect on all of my other expertise. Like 30 something amendments, right? Here in Texas, we have like thousands, because every single time they want to change anything, they have to propose an amendment, right? So, so basically, hooks would kind of allow, you know, only things that would actually impact the entire ecosystem to be voted on at the mainnet level with the validators.
Yes.
People that wanted to implement or like smaller experiments for smart contracts,
exactly,
they wanted to do, it would be native to the network, and they could do that without
exactly
impacting everybody else.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is huge. This is really huge, and would help us tremendously. But yeah, again, the conversation needs to be held. How we can we do it? You know, you have on different sides, different people making different arguments. David Schwartz is, you know, I guess also you could tell this with David Schwartz, by the way. He was, you know, first, I think, no, this would we don't have the resources really on the XRP ledger for this. Would hurt the performance of it and the use case for the payment use case. Then I think there was an interview on the Defiant with him and an interviewer, and she asked him, "Do you have smart contracts?" He said, "Well, no." And then he then described and ultimately said, "No smart contract is no solution, but full smart contract maybe also not a solution. There has to be something in the middle." So I think I see also in his arguments that he is going through a shift right now, which for me was, you know, raising the, oh, okay, good, that's you know it.
Yeah, there's progression here, which is good.
There's progression. Yeah, there's a change in thinking, and and if you look at what the people do with hooks currently, JavaScript hooks, all that, it's fantastic, right? It's fantastic. They build so many use cases without an amendment. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So so you're thinking, you know, obviously that would have to be proposed for implementation of hooks on the mainnet. There would have to be acceptance and adoption of that. A vote would have to be put forth. There would be another amendment. Is that how that would work?
Probably, it probably would be another big amendment. But again, it needs this discussion phase, right? It needs to be proposed as a discussion and all of this, and because it's such a big move, right? Programmability. Yeah, if you really see this move, you would see everybody talking about it, and all that. It's like with the AMM, when AMM, automated market maker, DeFi. So programmability would be as big of a move. Let's see how that goes, but I'm curious to see where a journey is going. But with each month, looking at the amendments, looking at the voting, looking at all the things that we want to do, right? We're more and more thinking, right? I guess we agree that it is holding us back. Like we want to do things, but it's kind of preventing us
And I'm
from a
sure
lot of
any
things.
enterprise adoption of the XRPL, if there are, institutions, universities,
Yeah,
and governments that are
yeah,
running a validator node on the network, then they would want that too, right?
exactly,
CBDCs are going to require
exactly.
that functionality. Um, it's
There's a good there's a good friend of mine. He's at developer relations at Ripple, and they do also a lot of work with LATAM, South America. And we had a conversation. He said they're fully sold to smart contracts, like the Brazilian government and central bank. But they love blockchain and they want to adopt, but they need smart contracts because they have like very complicated social programs. They want this
yeah.
logic be implemented. So, you know, people need it. So they seem to be in an advocate for it. Even large institutions, they have maybe asset managers. You want to have logic on chain that is doing certain things because also for liability reasons, right? If you have something on chain, you are not holding the keys or something. That's a good thing, right?
Well, and it can't be
So
manipulated also, right?
absolutely,
There's a lot of people
absolutely.
that say code is law, and there's
Yes.
some truth to that, right? You
Yeah.
you can trust the code, you don't have to trust a counterparty in the transaction.
Correct.
So if you
Correct.
viewed it and you know that it's going to execute as it was written, then that
Yeah.
person can't manipulate the transaction. There's a lot of times when you're transacting with other people that I think that that'd be advantageous, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's one of the reasons I love the tech, and I can see the promise of it. I don't think we're quite there yet, but it does seem like it's coming. So,
Yeah.
I guess to wrap up, like what are you most excited about, and how can anybody help you or reach out to you?
Yeah. So I think specifically DeFi is something I'm very much passionate about. I really like DeFi. Of course, I really love NFTs, given that also the XRP
XRP Cafe.
Cafe.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think real world assets is something that is very interesting. Like we see tokenized gold coming, T-bills with Open Eden. There's a lot coming and interesting products and services that brings just a new layer, a new group of users. We have like normal users, maybe retail like me, but having more institutions coming to the XRP Ledger doing something like that is fantastic. Seeing them integrating and using the XRP Ledger, and I really want to see this use case being built out as making the XRP Ledger, mass adopting it, people using it, institutions and retail. Because I always said if Ripple can bring institutions to the blockchain and we are the retail, we can meet halfway on the XRP Ledger. It would be amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah, other than that, you feel free. People can follow me and on X and of course be on your shows and get informed about it. And that's fantastic. So yeah.
yeah, awesome. So like you said, if you don't follow him over on X or Twitter,
It's vet underscore XO. Yeah.
perfect. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you put out a lot of really good quality content. It's a bit more
Thanks.
technical, right?
Yeah.
So if you do have interest in how things are actually progressing on the XRPL, some of the dynamics in the ecosystem and the
Yeah.
conversation around
Yeah.
how things are progressing and where it's going to go, definitely go follow that, and go
Thank
check
you.
out XRP Cafe, and we'll have
Thank
all
you.
the links in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see y'all on the next one.